Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us here at Dangerous Ideas slash Common Censored. Well, it's still the Dangerous Ideas channel. I can't act like this isn't Dangerous Ideas. It's Dangerous Ideas and Common Censored in a beautiful merging of minds.
Mm-hmm.
I'm joined by Eleanor Goldfield, who's skeptical of being here right now. And thank you all.
I'm skeptical of branding. Is what I'm skeptical of.
I think you should have brought this up at the branding meeting that we have every Tuesday.
Okay.
Thanks for being here. Thanks for joining us. I am the most censored comedian in America. I'm joined by one of the most censored journalists in America, and
I don't know if that's true.
Okay, I'm joined by a journalist, and
well, because there are journalists that are more censored than me. Shadow banned, perhaps.
Okay.
Not interested in the shit I have to write.
I'm joined by one of the least interesting journalists. No, that doesn't sound good.
I didn't say that, dick.
You said not interested in what I have to write.
No, but what I write is interesting.
Oh, I agree.
The powers that be.
Yes.
Okay.
Agreed.
See, this is the shit that you should have discussed at your branding meeting, was how to introduce me properly. Not making
that's why you should show up next time.
Of the name of your show.
That's why you should show up next time. An American intelligence official has said that the war in Ukraine is over, but they have to keep the lie going. That and more. Many revelations, including that coming from Seymour Hersh, the famed journalist who now is not allowed to publish in any mainstream media outlets, which is really par for the course of the United States of America. But we're going to get into that story. We're going to get into other things that happened at this meeting of the UN General Assembly. Also, some big updates on the fight against big oil and big fossil fuels. We got all kinds of shit coming your way. So thanks for being here. Please make sure to hit share and subscribe and all that stuff. And that's all right. And Eleanor Goldfield will join us any minute.
Well, okay.
Just kidding.
I'm not even.
Don't humor me. All right, but let's begin by getting to this article by Seymour Hersh, who's been doing great reporting, including the revelations, of course, about a year ago of the U.S. blowing up the Nord Stream pipeline. That was Seymour Hersh who did that.
Not blew up the pipeline. He didn't blow up the pipeline.
Seymour Hersh is fucking, dude, he is unhinged. So here's the latest article. And I want you to notice just for a moment, because it'll come back up later, where Zelensky's sitting. All right. He's next to this other guy, also in green, because apparently that's the only color they're allowed to wear. And just keep a note of that, because for some reason I think that might come in handy in a few minutes.
Yeah. Okay.
Next Tuesday will be the anniversary of the Biden administration's destruction of 3 of the 4 pipelines of Nord Stream 1 and 2. Significant elements in the American intelligence community believe that the demoralized Ukraine army has given up on the possibility of overcoming the heavily mined 3-tier Russian defense lines and taking the war to Ukraine and the 4 oblasts seized and annexed by Russia. The reality is that Zelensky's battered army no longer has any chance of victory. And again, I'm not saying this, not again, this is the first time in this episode, but I'm not saying this out of any yay, Russia's awesome, beat Ukraine. I just like to know the truth about reality.
Well, and it also matters in terms of, because we're funding this war. The United States is funding this war.
Not you and me, but yeah.
No, I could barely fund my coffee. But the United States is funding this war. And to the tune, and I covered this in a recent episode on Project Censored, to the tune of 3,000 times the amount of money, for humanitarian aid, not just weapons, because that's many, many thousand times, but the amount of money that's been earmarked for humanitarian aid to Ukraine is 3,000 times the amount of aid that's been earmarked for Maui. So I think that it's important to know what the fuck this money is going to. And it's literally going to a quagmire that Russia is still not having a problem dealing with. And so, not that it would be like, yeah, fuck yeah, if Ukraine were winning the war. Like, that's not to say that it's that simple of a binary, but it is important to recognize the context of where this money is going. So, war sucks, like in general.
Which is
So it's
one
not
of the
like
biggest reasons we're anti-war.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So we're not uplifting the story to be like, yeah, fuck yeah, Russia, or if it were the opposite, fuck yeah, Ukraine. Like, no, this is just balls. All of it is just shit. But the context is important, right? Information matters. So
Instead of fuck yeah, we're chanting mainly, yeah, fuck.
that's a good
See?
one. I like that.
Yeah.
That was very, very elegant.
You're
Turnaround.
welcome. I mean, I mentioned it at the branding meeting, but you didn't even
You know what? With the
show up.
fucking brand meeting,
Believe that.
just so y'all
war-
know, there isn't actually a branding meeting. Okay, so he's full of shit. I didn't miss shit.
The war, to continue from Seymour Hersh, the war continues, I've been told, by an official with access to current intelligence. And I also want to point out here that Seymour Hersh has a long-standing, this goes to media literacy, which is one of your favorite topics. Seymour Hersh has a long-standing record of being right on these things and having solid intel within the U.S. government. Now, outside of the U.S. government, I don't know, but within the U.S. government, within the Pentagon, within the intelligence community, he tends to be very correct. And so that's why I feel I can pretty much rely on Seymour Hersh to be telling the truth about talking to U.S. intelligence officials. So he says the war continues, I've been told by an official with access to the intelligence, because Zelensky insists it must. There's no discussion in his headquarters, and there's others in the U.S. as well, but there's no discussion in his headquarters or in the Biden White House of a ceasefire and no interest in talks. It's all lies, the official said, speaking of the Ukrainian claims of incremental progress in the offensive. And they've suffered staggering losses while gaining ground in a few scattered areas that the Ukrainian military measures in meters per week. Meters per week. I don't know if you guys realize this. That is not a lot.
Meter, like, yeah, you're on
Meter.
We're almost 2 meters tall.
A single meter is only 12 and a half feet. I don't actually know.
No, like,
It's like
you
3
and I
feet.
are both
It's like 3 feet.
over a meter tall.
Yeah, it's like 3 feet a meter. So I hope we're over
Ish.
3 feet tall.
Well, I don't know exactly. I just know
Well, you said we're about 2 meters. You got it right the first time.
ish.
Yeah.
Like, not fully 2 meters, because I think 2 meters is like 7 feet or something. So we're not. We don't need to go. We don't need to stand.
After weeks of high casualty, and we're going to get to the key statement here in a second. Weeks of high casualty and little progress, along with horrific losses, he said major elements of the Ukrainian army, without declaring so, virtually canceled the offensive. This is the opposite. The other reason this is brilliant. This is the opposite of what you're getting from our mainstream media. The 2 villages that the Ukrainian army recently claimed as captured are so tiny that they couldn't fit between 2 Burma shave signs. So this guy's aging himself.
I don't know what a Burma shave is.
I'm about to tell you. Apparently that refers to billboards that were every 10 feet on American highways after World War II.
Okay,
So-
I feel like he could have done a lot better with that reference.
He aged himself a bit with that one, but
Yeah.
still, point is, the Ukrainian military has not, quote unquote, liberated, as they would say, very many towns, very much ground. Zelensky's message this week at the UN General Assembly in New York offered little new, and he delivered his address to a half-full house with many delegations declining to appear and listen to what he said. Okay, so, and I have one more thing to say after that, but let's remember, let's look at Zelensky addressing the UN General Assembly. This is, oh, you do know? Damn it! I
saw it on the Twitter.
Oh, I was hoping you wouldn't have seen it because I wanted to show it to you. But all right,
But it's good.
This is-
I'll pretend I don't.
yeah, pretend you haven't seen this. This is Zelensky addressing the UN General Assembly, and let's see. I have the video here. Oh, is this the video? No, that's the photo.
That's a photo.
So this is what it actually looked like. Mostly like almost 2/3 empty.
Right.
And this is because a lot of the nations around the world are either fully against U.S. sanctions and the U.S. proxy war, or just haven't signed on to a side and are not endorsing this kind of
Right.
endless war.
Or they're just tired.
They're tired of hearing him talk. Yeah, they're
Like-
tired of everything being about Zelensky. Okay, so
But
here,
the way that it's edited. Sorry, go ahead.
here he is speaking, and now we're going to look at one key moment. So this is Ukrainian television. That's important to note. It's Ukrainian television. And they're trying to show that he's speaking to a full house, even though it's a half empty house.
ядерне роззброєння. І це хороша стратегія.
Cut to crowd. Who is sitting in the crowd listening to Zelensky? But Zelensky.
You know why, Lee? Because he's that good.
He's that
so he
good.
wanted to make sure to listen to his own speech.
For those who are listening to the podcast, literally, as he's speaking, they cut to a packed crowd at the UN that happens to include Zelensky listening to his own speech from the crowd, which is truly amazing. I mean, he is. He's quite talented.
Beware of the editing, folks.
So this is just what propaganda
That's
looks
awesome.
like in the modern day society. And,
Someone got fired.
and again, here's a completely packed UN
Right.
General Assembly, which was not how it looked as he
I
spoke.
I wonder what
Тому що
speech this
убезпечити
was.
світ від
Yeah, where they were all there. Yeah. Okay, so I want to
Will the real Zelensky please stand up?
thank you, Tora T, for the comment who said, "Will the real Zelensky please stand up?"
That was an old reference as well. That,
Yeah,
that's
you
like
kids
from the-
out there don't know of the M&Ms.
God, what year was that? 2000
And 2001 or something. Okay, so last little piece from this Seymour Hersh article before we move on to our next topic. Biden, with the support of Secretary Blinken and Jake Sullivan, but diminishing support elsewhere in America, has turned his unrelenting financial and moral support for the Ukraine war into a do or die issue for his reelection. So that's a key point as well. Biden can't back out of this now because it's become a reelection issue, which, you know, who cares if 100,000 more Ukrainians have to die in order to attempt to get that fossilized taxidermied piece of shit back in office. To go back to Seymour Hersh, the American intelligence official I spoke with told me, quote, "The war is over. Russia has won. There is no Ukrainian offensive anymore, but the White House and the American media have to keep the lie going. The truth is, if the Ukrainian army is ordered to continue the offensive, the army would mutiny. The soldiers aren't willing to die anymore, but this doesn't fit the BS that is being authored by the Biden White House." And let me just repeat, that's U.S. intelligence. Like, that's a guy who's devoting his life to U.S. hegemony, but also is admitting the reality and telling Seymour Hersh about it.
Well, I don't have anything to add.
But you're signing off on. I don't mean you're signing off saying goodbye. I mean you're signing
Yeah, I
off
was
on
like,
the,
I just got here.
you're signing off on the segment.
Yeah,
I endorse this segment.
I endorse this segment, and again, feel that the context is important. So
All right, so moving on, let's get to if we can start talking about this. I gotta find another way to pull it up because fucking Los Angeles Times with the goddamn paywalls. But
I've never heard anyone say the full name. The Los Angeles Times,
why? What do people call it?
LA Times.
Oh, well, I don't know. We don't only say NY Times. I also
No,
say
no
New
one
York
says
Times.
NY Times, but that's a separate thing.
Okay.
I don't know why, but it's always the LA Times. Nobody calls it Los Angeles Times.
Eleanor lived in Los
The more
Angeles
you know.
for many years. Okay, so go ahead and start this one, and I'll pull up the visual in a second.
Okay, so the headline in the LA Times, if you will,
You have to rub it in.
reads, California sues 5 major oil companies for, quote, decades-long campaign of deception, end quote, about climate change. So the state attorney general, Rob Bonta, wow. Let me start. That sentence didn't know where it wanted to go. Filed the lawsuit this past Friday in San Francisco County Superior Court, alleging that ExxonMobil, Shell, Chevron, ConocoPhillips, BP, and the American Petroleum Institute have known since the 1950s that the burning of fossil fuels would warm the planet, but instead of alerting the public about the dangers posed to the environment, they chose to deny or downplay the effects. I'm not saying anything that anybody doesn't already fucking know.
A lot of people still don't. I mean, I've talked about it several times, but that doesn't mean everybody watches everything I do. How long they've fucking known?
Yeah, dude.
1950s.
Well, and I was amazed that I read an article in like I can't remember, it was West Virginia or Kentucky newspaper from the 1890s that said that the burning of coal was destroying ecosystems. They didn't use that word, but basically ecosystems in the area. And it's like this little tiny fucking article, and you're like, the 1890s. Like, wow.
In the 1890s, they started being like, we think that burning these things and putting it in the air actually can cause some harm.
Yeah.
But then by the 1950s, they knew that it was being done at such a level that it would alter the planet's temperature. And then by the 1970s, they'd done more studies, and internally, they knew actually the years this would start to happen. And it turns out they've been right within like, you know, a few decimal points of a degree.
Yeah. So that's the point that he's making. And he also pointed out that with the lawsuit, California becomes the largest geographic area and the largest economy, because California is like the 6th largest economy in the world, to take these giant oil companies to court. And he's seeking to create what's called a nuisance abatement fund to finance climate mitigation and adaptation efforts. Injunctive relief to protect California's natural resources from pollution, impairment, and destruction, and to prevent the companies from making any further false or misleading statements about the contribution to fossil fuel combustion to climate change. Now, what you'll notice is one of the things he's obviously not seeking to do, because you can't do that via a lawsuit. This would require more specific and pointed legislation, as it would not create a moratorium on like oil and gas drilling. But the idea that this could actually force oil companies to pay for the destruction that they're responsible for is fucking great. However, again,
we've seen how they deal with losing those lawsuits.
Well, and also I think
Donziger.
Right. And I also think that it's important to note that this is not going to, as I mentioned, fix the problem, because A, California is just one state, and B, it doesn't suggest a moratorium. It's basically like a fund to deal with the shit that's going to happen or is already happening. So it's like, that's great if you use it properly, which that's another story unto itself. But again, like, I wanted to share this because I think that it is a good move, and it shows that a diversity of tactics is good, and that that we can push public officials, in this case a state official, to do shit like this, which once again proves that this is an urgent issue. And so I think that's a good thing, but we should also, again, like the importance of context, we should contextualize it in the reality that exists. Like, oh, wow, this is great, it's going to solve everything. No, this is a good move. It's a good step, and it'll be interesting to see how it plays out, but it will be just that, interesting, not a lifesaver. Well,
and you mentioned diversity of tactics, such an important aspect of any fight, but this is one of the biggest fights. To have the lawsuits going at these big oil companies, to have the protesters going at these big oil companies, to push for divestment against these big oil companies, to push the mainstream media to cover these types of stories. Each level of this, and that's just a few of them, are so important, and they add up over time to actually having the intended effect. But you know, if you put all your eggs in one basket, then sometimes someone sits on the basket and all the eggs break. I believe that's
the person who sits in your basket is really the message here. But I just wanted to
fuck basket sitters.
For further context, they use because this is always the case with cases, there's precedent, they ask for precedent. And there's precedent here with regards to, for instance, the $246 billion settlement against Big Tobacco, which was brought because they were marketing products that they knew caused injury, but they didn't, of course, say that in their sexy ads. And so that was a $246 billion settlement. So that's great. But obviously, you can still buy cigarettes. And I'm not saying you shouldn't. I'm not I'm not in that camp. I'm just saying that this is an example. People still smoke. So this is not the path to a moratorium on oil and gas drilling. This could potentially bring in funds that, again, could be used to mitigate damage that happens, but it won't stop the drilling. So other tactics need to be used for that.
Absolutely. So let's get to our next story, which is actually circling back to more from the UN General Assembly.
Yeah, I just liked this. A tale of two speeches.
A tale of two speeches. No, I think it shows a lot, both what America stands for and what other countries stand for, and what they're willing to use this tiny amount of time. Think about the amount of time a country has to speak to the UN General Assembly and what they choose to highlight in that speech.
Which, is there equal time? Like,
I don't know.
Does Trinidad and Tobago get the same amount of time as the U.S.? I'm serious. Like, I think that's an important question.
I'm going to bet no on that one. I'm going to say absolutely not. I'd be surprised if they get to, like, have a little kiosk in the hallway as people are arriving. Okay, so we'll start off by saying something about Lula's speech.
Lula da Silva, president of Brazil.
For some odd reason, his is in a different language or something.
How dare you.
So I don't know what he's saying.
É fundamental preservar a liberdade.
I mean, listen to that. That's ridiculous. So
I've always thought Portuguese feels like you've been placed into a fun house and are listening to Spanish. It's all just kind of like, wow. It's like warped, and I understand it's a different language, but like because I can understand some Spanish. Portuguese, I'm fucking useless. Anyway, so for those of you who don't speak Portuguese, and it won't matter anyway because we're not playing the video, but the president of Brazil, Lula da Silva, spoke at the opening of the UN General Assembly. This was the September 19th, and he said, quote, "It is fundamental to preserve the freedom of the press. A journalist like Julian Assange cannot be punished for informing society in a transparent and legitimate way," end quote. Well, 3 cheers to that. Fucking amen. And how fucking wonderful that he chooses to uplift the plight of Julian Assange in, again, what Lee pointed out is not a lot of time that he has to stand up there. And there's so many important issues, but this is a powerful and important thing to bring up, and also a very nice fuck you to the likes of the UK and its overlord, the United States. And so, amen to this speech.
Yeah,
not so
and
much to the next one.
And this comes on the heels of 60 Australian lawmakers, 60 members of parliament coming out and saying Julian Assange should be free and allowed to return to his home country of Australia. So yes, another important moment. But so that's speech number 1. And then let's get to Biden's amazing speech.
Nope,
That's
third
Brazil.
one.
Go ahead.
President Biden took aim at Russia.
So also
Color me surprised.
Also standing up for human rights violations, right?
So yeah, just close that one. Discussing arms control, which, okay, if anybody, wow, like the largest, by orders of magnitude, the largest weapons exporter on the planet,
And we just
dares stand up
sent
there
cluster bombs
and
to
talk
Nazis
about arms control. President Biden accused Russia of, quote, shredding longstanding arms control agreements, end quote, which, by the way, there's too much.
Well, Trump. I think Trump pulled out of most of them, didn't he?
Well, and not only that, but do we want to talk about like who
Dropped
pulled...
atomic bombs.
Well, yeah, but also like who pulled out of the Iran deal?
Yeah.
Who has, like you just said, sent cluster bombs to fucking
cluster
Nazis.
bombs to Nazis that are banned. Cluster bombs are banned in 100 countries. We also were finding ways around these treaties with Russia, such as basically you take the main, center of a nuclear bomb and you change everything around, you retrofit it or whatever to make it more modern. So you're updating your nuclear arsenal, which was supposed to be against these treaties. But you're like, no, all we did was change the flux capacitor. We didn't.
Also, the U.S. exited Open Skies in 2020, a treaty that allowed the U.S., Russia, and other signatories to conduct unarmed surveillance flights over each other's territory. At the time, Biden, who was a candidate, slammed the move, but his administration declined Russia's offer to salvage the treaty in 2021. And this post by the guy who runs antiwar.com, Dave DeCamp, outlines several other issues, like in 2002, George W. Bush pulled out of the Anti-Ballistic Missile Systems Treaty, which President Putin has cited as the reason for developing Russia's most powerful missile that can pack a huge nuclear payload and travel 11,000 miles. So again, we see the history and the pattern of behavior vis-a-vis the U.S. continuously poking the Russian bear and daring them to go to war. And of course, now we have the proxy war in Ukraine as the hot war effect of that. But so Biden goes on to say, I'm laughing because it's so fucking ridiculous. And I want to beat Biden to death with one of his own fucking shoes.
He actually beat you to the death. He's been dead for a while now.
It's like Weekend at Bernie's. Quote, Russia alone bears responsibility for this war. I mean, wow. Russia alone has the power to end this war immediately, says the guy who just sent cluster bombs to Nazis.
Says the guy who also, he and Boris Johnson in the UK pushed to stop the peace treaty that was about to be signed April of last year, so like a month after the war started. They made sure to stop that peace treaty. They are now making sure that Ukraine not sit down to a table again and create a new peace treaty, that there are no talks. And on top of this, which is said next in the paragraph, you have the head of NATO just the other day, I covered that on a live stream, said that NATO, that Putin invaded in order to prevent Ukraine from joining NATO and due to NATO expansion, which is the opposite of the propaganda we've been getting for a year and a half.
Right. So, this is like, again, a tale of two speeches. This is what Biden goes up at the UN to basically just stand there and talk shit and lies, clearly, about Russia. And as if that's the only international aspect that is important and valid to bring up. Of course, not the US's endless wars around the globe, both financial and, hot wars. And this is what Biden decides to cover. And again, I'm not surprised, but I'm angered and I'm fucking disgusted. And, compare that with the likes of Lula, who goes up there to speak about a journalist who has nothing directly to do with his nation, just like he has nothing directly to do with the United States, because Assange is not a citizen of the US and has never lived here. But Lula goes out of his way to highlight how fucked up it is to go after Assange. Just shows you the kind of people we're dealing with.
Yeah, I mean, the U.S. just pushes war on every level at every moment, and Biden really is staking his re-election on keeping this war going, to fighting Russia to the last Ukrainian. And it's just repulsive, but you see what other world leaders find valuable. And it's also why half of them didn't attend Zelensky's speech, is because many of those that didn't attend were from places like Africa that feel that no aid or cooperation or diplomacy is being given to them, while the U.S. and other countries are so busy sending billions to fight the proxy war.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on to the next topic here. But let's pause and say that everyone should check out Eleanor's new film, To the Trees, tothetreesfilm.com. It's a new documentary from Eleanor that is awesome and powerful and important. Her last documentary won all kinds of awards, and yeah, I think you should definitely check it out.
Aw, shucks. Thanks.
So that's tothetreesfilm.com. Okay, so I hope I'm going to be able to play this clip successfully because Instagram can suck a bag.
Dude,
Every time I try and click on it, it plays the.
I know. The extent to which Lee hates Instagram is funny. It's fun.
And like most platforms, I start off hating them. Like whatever it was, 12 years ago, I started off hating Twitter. And then you give me a few months and I'm like, okay, I guess I found my way of using it, whatever. Instagram never grows on me. It's all just fucking bullshit and garbage and meant to be like hard to use and suck a bag, Instagram. All right. Did I say that?
Do you feel better?
No.
I'm sorry.
But let's see if we can get this clip. So this was posted by Mint Press, where I used to have a show for a while there, but it is a clip from 60 Minutes. I think it might be.
God, is 60 Minutes still going?
Yes, but this is 3 IDF reservists.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
So they're in the IDF, and they're actually, the reason they're being interviewed is because they're saying they have issues with Netanyahu as a leader. So, okay, fine. But listen to this clip, if it plays. Of course not.
Try it again.
If you want pilots to be able to fly and shoot bombs and missiles into houses knowing they might be killing children, they must have the strongest confidence in the people making those decisions.
The moral values of them.
Yeah, I agree. Agree.
It's
Totally.
so...
You got to know that the person who ordered you to murder children has a strong moral compass. That's important.
Do you hear the words coming out of your face? Listen, if we're going to be murdering loads of children, you have to have a lot of confidence
Yeah.
that it's good to murder those children.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fucking what?
Yeah.
Like, and these people are getting airtime or being shown on 60 Minutes because they're the like ones.
Dissenters.
They're the dissenters with
dissenters.
moral qualms about Netanyahu's leadership.
Look,
but
I just
not
want to be brainwashed by a nicer guy, okay? All I'm asking.
Look, all I'm asking is that when I'm bombing children, I want to believe
Want a
you're
nicer boss.
I want to believe you're a cool guy.
Yeah.
Is all.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm more than willing to bomb kids for you.
Totally.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Excited even.
Yeah.
But just like, could we have like free bagel Friday at the office?
It's a big deal.
Because then I'd be more cool with it.
Big deal. Yeah.
Since this is only 12 seconds, I'm going to play it again.
If you want pilots to be able to fly and shoot bombs and missiles into houses knowing they might be killing children, they must have the strongest confidence in the people making those decisions.
The moral values of them.
The moral values of murdering children with missiles.
Right. Because you don't want to be murdering children if you're kind of like about your boss. You want to be murdering children with full faith in your boss.
Yep.
Yeah, that's relatable.
Do you want a baseball bat blind orphans to the
Right.
head while going, but I love my boss.
Yeah.
Big
Yeah.
fan. Big fan.
Yeah. I just also like to take a minute to note that these are the kind of people that are also training our police.
Yes, a lot of our U.S.
So-
police trained by
Israeli forces.
Israeli forces.
So think about that next time there's another story of police brutality in the United States. I mean, they're getting the goods from people who, and again, these are the dissenting opinions who have absolutely no problems with who tells them to murder children, as if that's any better.
Right.
So yeah, that's These are like the screaming radicals of
Yeah, these are the
Israel.
peaceniks.
Yeah, these are the peaceniks. So if these are the peaceniks, imagine what the warnicks. What are we
Talk about the Overton window. They basically made the two sides of allowable debate either kill children and not even worry about who your boss is, or kill children and I wish my boss was cooler. Those are the two sides of the entirety of debate within the IDF.
Wow. I mean, it's so remarkable to me that people will still fucking support Israel.
Yeah.
Like, it's people, Zionists watching that clip, is there, like, do they even hear it? Or do they hear it and they just go, but the Holocaust?
And I know we go through this too many times, but do you have like a 30-second version of the difference between Zionist and Jewish person?
Oh my God, do I? What does it have to be 30 seconds? Okay. So Zionism is a concept that was created by Jews and non-Jews for colonialist purposes. Literally, if you look at the founding concepts and the founding writings of Zionism, the idea is to be the colonizer. This whole beautiful story about Jews coming home, which, by the way, is a totally like bullshit rhetoric anyway. If you look at Shlomo Sand's book, The Invention of the Jewish People, most of us Jews cannot trace our roots back to Israel anyway. And that's okay. Even if we could, still does not give you the right to fucking build an apartheid state on the homes and the backs of people that you oppress. So that is Zionism. And anti-Zionism has a very, very, very rich and powerful history inside Jewish communities. And so a lot of us Jews relate to that. And it is important to not conflate Judaism and Zionism. It is important for Jews to speak up against Zionism because the rise and the continuation of Zionism is the largest threat to Jews around the globe. That was longer than 30 seconds, but I actually think that I did that pretty short and sweet.
I thought that was perfect. I was going to say 30 seconds to 2 minutes, and I think you got in under the wire.
Well, you know what?
Barely.
Brevity is not my strong point, so if I can get in under 5 minutes, I'm fucking
I was being genuine. I think it was great. Okay, folks, so we have more topics coming, such as, speaking of cops training, being trained by Israel, we have more topics coming, including update on the fight against Cop City in Atlanta, and much more. And that all of that will be at rumble.com/leaguecamp, as well as my locals page. The other streams will cut off, like when you sneeze while peeing. So the other streams will cut off in a second, but rumble.com/leaguecamp and locals page will continue. And let's get into this vote to stop Cop City, or not vote, the petition. And while you talk about that, I will work on this.
So just some backstory, and we've talked about this, but there was an incredible push. So basically, speaking of diversity of tactics here, the folks that are fighting to stop Cop City have done an amazing job in terms of diversity of tactics. And one of the tactics that they used was getting people to sign a petition against Cop City. And I don't remember exactly how many signatures they needed to get, but they got way more than they needed to. They got 116,000 signatures. Now,
I feel like they needed 60 or something.
I think it was like 80, but I don't want to say that and be wrong, so I'm just going to say I don't know.